How you doing, folks? You're watching Onward with Onrie, and I'm your host, Onrie Compen. Today's guest is somebody I am so looking forward to talking to. David Whalen from upstate New York is a teacher and a comic book creator, and I am fascinated to hear about his approach to comics, about his experiences bringing comics into teaching, especially right now with what's going on with COVID-19 and everything. I got lots of great questions that I want to ask him right now. But the one thing that a lot of people have been asking me lately is how am I handling everything with what's going on? And I've been basically just I find myself in a very lucky phase right now because I get to talk to all these different creators and learn so much from them. And what I learn from all of these creators, all of you, is stuff that I will absolutely bring with me once the convention season picks back up. So without further ado, let's take it away from me and bring on our most honored guest, David Whalen. Welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
Good. I mean, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
I want to give you a chance right now to tell us all about who you are and what you do, and then we'll go from there.
Sure, yeah. Like I said, I'm a teacher from upstate New York. I'm the owner of Correct Handed Comics, who we try to put out as much content as we possibly can throughout the year. And I'm lucky enough to be able to teach elementary school and be able to bring some of those comic skills and comic know-how to the elementary classroom also. In fact, you were talking about all this weirdness with the COVID-19. We've had to do some remote learning in the last couple of months. And I just did a Google Meet with my fourth graders. And we spent about 45 minutes making our own characters, breaking down how to draw the human figure, breaking down how to add details to them to turn them into any kind of character that you wanted to do. So I'm really see myself as a lucky guy to be able to not only create comic books, to be able to tell stories that I want to tell in different genres, with different characters that I have created on my own, but also give kids a chance to be able to have that outlet also. So I really consider myself one of the luckiest people in the world to be able to do what I love, but also teach what I love to kids who, the second they hear comic books, even if they've never read a comic book in their life, you talk about Avengers and Justice League and all that stuff in the movies and the cartoons, their eyes light up. So I'm really in a great place right now to be able to, especially in all this weirdness, give those kids a chance to be able to use their imagination, to be able to create their own characters, to be able to communicate things that they want to communicate, because we know sometimes that's hard as a kid, and also be able to communicate stories and in characters that I want to communicate also. So I'm a pretty lucky guy, and I'm pretty happy with what's going on right now in my life.
You absolutely are. And while you were telling me everything, the only thing that was going in my head is where have you been all my life? And the reason why I say this is because my son and I'm homeschooling my son right now, and I feel very bad. I feel very disconnected from him right now because as I've been getting busier with my new career path, I find myself having less time to really monitor his schoolwork. And I've grown really frustrated with the education system and how they're handling stuff. And I'm not taking any of it personally because I understand the strain it puts on teachers. But, I get, we have these, we have intervals. So there's, every other day is his homeschool teacher and he's doing like math, science, all these things. But as far as his electives go, they're still trying to keep that going, and the teachers are not engaging the students enough. They're posting videos, but they're not actually interacting with the students. And I think that's really like limiting their education in a lot of ways. Like our teachers only have like 20-minute meetings and things like that. And I don't have the time to really help my kid develop an interest in drawing. Like he needs to, I feel like kids need to be engaged. He's 7 years old.
Oh, yeah.
And so how do you and you're a creator just like me, so you do the same thing I do. Okay, when you're thinking of new scenes and everything like that, and you got a kid being like dad, or you have a student, and I'm sure your students, you want to help them because there's some level of commitment there, because either it's by obligation or by actual genuine interest, probably more of the latter than the former. because it's comics, like everybody wants to work in comics or draw their own comic. Even my kid loves that. But yes, it's like what you're saying. So going off of that, what do you do to like keep yourself motivated, keep yourself focused, and how do you keep, like students engaged at the same time? Like you're multitasking in a lot of ways. So please tell me all about that.
Yeah, it can be tough sometimes. I will say that when we started this about a month ago, I was doing kind of the same thing, putting up videos that I was making. And you don't know oftentimes what the students have in their house. So they had to be really stripped down lessons, really simplified things to be able to draw. And sometimes when you get into the 4th, 5th grade, where they're a little bit more advanced in some of those things, it can be hard to kind of gauge what they're doing and how they're doing. So I would email here and there some of the students that I know would, and parents that would give me the heads up on how those kids are doing. And I would say that for the most part, I still connect with, I'd say probably about 80% of my students at least once a week, which is pretty good, I think, as you were saying, as a humanities teacher, as an art teacher.
Of course it is. It's hard. It's so hard.
In there.
So hard. So the fact that you have that commitment for once a week, that's...
Yeah, those regular classroom teachers kind of, especially for as far as administration goes, they can take kind of precedence. So you got to kind of wedge yourself in there whenever you can. And like I said, I'm lucky enough to have a group of parents and students that see that I'm trying to wedge myself in there, and they come up and they email or they get on Google Classroom, and they let me know that they are seeing what I'm doing. And when I started doing Google Meets just last week, so we were a whole month in the quarantine before I actually started doing the Google Meets, because a lot of parents were said they were very overwhelmed by all of the stuff being sent home for their students to do, because they're not teachers. They don't know how to,
No. I am so not a teacher. Yeah. I mean, I lose my shit on my kid, and I hate myself for it. I absolutely do. But I also feel like if I don't do it, he's not going to learn. Yeah. And it's not that, my wife and I both feel like we're failing. I think that's what it really comes down to. Because if
you're trying, you're not failing. If you're sitting them down for at least 25, 30 minutes a day on whatever subject it is, you're not. Unfortunately, there are students or parents that have to go to work, or for whatever reason, their kids are just stuck in front of video games all day. And that's where I think those kids that are in that situation are going to be the ones.
Yeah, we actually we had to ground them, because I keep telling them, you got to clean up after yourself. You got to do a couple things, and if I don't teach him this now, I'll never learn it. Yeah. Of course, he's going to look back on this one day and be embarrassed that I shared this and be upset with me. But
my wife makes the joke that we're home all day. Our house should be immaculate. And I said, no, but we're home all day.
Oh, no. My house has never been dirtier. But now let's use this as a chance to segue, because obviously this takes up a lot of your time. But I don't think anybody would take you seriously if you didn't take yourself seriously. And by taking yourself seriously, that means really focusing in on your comic book work. So tell us what you're working on, and tell us, what your process is like,
Yeah, I have a few books out right now. One of the books that I'm really focusing on is an ongoing series that I have. It's an action thriller suspense called The Offspring. And it is about 3 troubled kids. They're in their 20s, and they grew up together. And they realized at a very young age they had a really good connection with each other. But they soon realize that as they grow up and they kind of fall apart from each other, they fall away from each other, they come back together due to special circumstances, and start to realize that the connection that they had, the friendship they have, kind of is more than just a friendship. So they are struggling not only with the demons on the inside, with their troubled past, their troubled childhood that they had, but they're also dealing with now what seems to be supernatural creatures, demons, issues coming at them to try to, what they don't know is to test them for their ultimate goal of ending the universe. So,
you know what it reminds me of for some reason? Have you ever seen Dead at 21?
I've heard of it, but I've never seen it.
Oh, okay. It was an MTV show, and it kind of reminded me of that. The concept reminds me of that a little bit. And it was a very short-lived MTV show, but I loved it. It was so good. It was Bill Bellamy. I don't know if you know that actor, but yeah, he was basically like this dude who turned 21 and like found out that he was like he was part of some experiment and that he was going to die, you know, a year from that point because he had just turned 20. So by 21 he was supposed to die or whatever. But I don't remember it that well. But it was just a really pulled you in, kind of like a trippy experience, you know. And I like that. So who was the audience for that? Is not an audience, but I mean, obviously you want to get this into as many hands as possible. But like, what genre would you say this is?
A suspense thriller.
Yeah, right on.
The reason that I created this book to begin with is because I wanted to be able to kind of weave in and out of genres.
Yeah. And you had said that in the beginning, so I'm sorry. I made you. I didn't want you to think I wasn't following you. I'm sorry about that. Okay. I don't think I phrased the question right.
Yeah, that's okay. No, I created it to kind of go from horror to thriller to suspense to action adventure to time travel to superhero, because they do have abilities, they do have powers, but you'll come to find out why their powers are so important and so specific to each character. And we'll grow to find out the different background and why these characters are doing the things they're able to do and why they have such a good connection to each other. And
you do everything yourself. You're the writer, like artist.
Everything. I was lucky enough to have a couple colorists at the beginning, but come to find out that just as I'm working, it's just a little bit. I wouldn't say easier because it's never easy in a good way, in the most positive way. But I could be able to really control the colors and what the book looked like through all the processes, and that's so I decided just to be a one-man band with this ongoing series.
And being a one-man band and a school teacher is no simple feat, because it is extremely hard work doing the self-publish. Before I even assume that, are you self-publishing this? How are you getting this out there?
So, like I said, I'm Correct Handed Comics is the name of my publishing company.
Okay, so you're self-publishing then?
Yeah, and I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, and a couple different pages. And I really just try to promote as much as I possibly can. Go to conventions.
We're cut from the same cloth, my friend. Yeah, right on.
And try to get the Amazon stuff out there as much as I possibly can. I'm currently out of most of my hard copies, my physical copies of books, which is great.
Yeah, fuck yeah, it's great.
So really just trying to promote and to get out as many different books as I have out, and just try to post enough but not too much.
Yeah, for sure.
Finding that fine line of gosh, this guy again stopped posting 4 times a day to, there's the guy that posted that yesterday and he's got new stuff out. Awesome. So,
well, that's what I kind of want this to be for you, is something that, like when you do that next campaign, that you feel comfortable enough to share it, because this is you being candid, talking about the things that are, passionate to you without having the pressure of promoting it directly. Like, and granted, I'm not opposed to anybody coming on the show to like simply promote, if they have a Kickstarter, like I want to help in any way I possibly can. But what I really enjoy is the fact that we can talk to each other and get to know one another, because otherwise, how would we really have a chance? It's like we're all living our lives. You're teaching, and that's you're busy. Your weeks are busy with that, and then I assume you do conventions too, because. Or from time to time? From time to time,
I'm in, like I said, upstate New York. It's a very rural area.
Yeah, sure.
Every convention, even comic book shops, are an hour and a half away in every direction.
Oh, no kidding.
So okay. I'm kind of stuck on an island up here on some level. But when we do have conventions, I go to them, at the very least, go to them. It's one way that I see my chance to be able to support indie comics just by going to the conventions. And I usually pick up 2 or 3 indie comics and meet characters. And like I said, it's those connections that we make to each other that help us kind of push each other forward.
Absolutely.
Going to the conventions and being able to shake hands, and be able to have the book and talk to them about their process, like you said, really makes that connection even better, to be able to go back to my Facebook page and say, hey, I just found this great, another great indie creator. Here's his book, her book. Here's where you can find him. Check him out. So yeah, it's kind of hard with conventions not being a thing right now.
Absolutely.
At least in-person conventions, not being a thing.
No, of course. And I mean, aside from that, it's what you do for comics is far more important anyway. because you're bringing comics to an area that doesn't have comics. If what you're telling me is true, then that means all the kids in your school don't have easy access to comics.
They don't, and I try to show them and give them as much.
And that's a problem in my area too, by the way. Like in my neighborhood, I mean, the public library has stuff, but the school libraries, they don't really carry a lot of comics.
Yeah, they don't. They don't have much comics. They have the little trades, and some anime stuff, but not a lot. And that's something I'm looking to remedy.
Now, when you're teaching your classes, what kind of do you reference the same kind of stuff that inspires you, or do you kind of want to give them a more structured class in terms of like, this is how you draw the body, or I've taken art classes before, but I am not a good artist. I'm just I just do layouts, but my layouts are very like amateurish. There's no way it could compared to what my art team does. But I take the craft of that very seriously, because even though the art is crappy, I'm thinking about the storytelling and the actual sequential like structure of the page so that it has a beginning, middle, and end. You know how it is. There's the professional thinker, and then there's the guy that has to kind of like bring it to the masses, and that's what you're doing.
Yeah. And that's always a learning process. And I would say for the students, I try to bring things that I know are going to interest them. So I'll give you an example. When we're talking about the color wheel, and we're talking about primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, I always tell them that when I was a kid, it always helped me to remember my primary colors as Superman or Supergirl's costume. So we talk about the red cape, the blue suit, the yellow in his belt and his shield. And I tell them that that's a way that I used to remember the three primary colors. And I hope that helps them to remember also, getting that visual in their brain. But for the most part, what I really try to do is break down every element of art in such a digestible way that when they walk out of my classroom in 5th grade to go to middle school 6th grade, they can name all of the elements of art and they can explain what they are. They don't have to draw it perfectly. They don't have to be the best artist in the world, but they can at the very least explain what the elements of art are, how they use the elements of art to be able to build a picture, and be able to use those elements to make the principles of art. So as an art teacher, especially at the elementary school level, it's getting them digestible chunks to be able to remember from day to day.
And how does that help you with your technique of moving the actual books that you produce?
It helps to be able to not oversaturate. To not over communicate what it is I'm doing. So again, digestible bites, and then putting it on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, wherever it is, to be able to have that 10 or 15 sentences to be able to describe what it is and what I'm trying to communicate. And it definitely has helped me as an artist to be able to see things from a more, we're comic book artists and creators. We're all very imaginative, but that 6, 7, 10, 12-year-old child is going to have even more crazy stuff in their brain from time to time. So to be able to see their imagination, to be able to kind of soak that imagination in, really helps to motivate me as a creator to be able to keep moving forward, especially when a student holds up something and they say, I don't know how to draw that, Mr. Whalen. And I say, here's your opportunity to try. Don't worry about messing up, just do it. And they draw, and then that look on their face like, I did it. And I said, yeah, 2 minutes ago you said you couldn't do it, but now you did it. So
I don't have that patience. I'm so sorry. Like, what the hell? Can't you tell that, a woman is supposed to be more curvy and not so straight and rigid?
Any teacher that tells you they haven't lost their patience from time to time is lying to you. But yeah, for the most part.
What is wrong with you, Dad? No, I'm definitely not that kind of dad. But here's where I think I fail in comparison. You have such a structure, which I think is such a powerful thing. Is that I guess my patience wears very thin because there's so much out there. Like when you're at a convention, it's just like I don't get offended by rejection. It happens, naturally, and I get rejected all the time. But, you know, like if I get rejected, I've already moved on like 10 seconds ago. Like I'm not hurt by it. I'm not, you know, and it's not that I like to shove people aside. Like, okay, you're not interested. Get out of the way. You know, like I never mean to come off that way. But when you're trying to get stuff out there, there's this like energy that comes from like, I have to move this out there.
Yeah.
And I guess that part of me is really missing because of the fact that, you know, I can't have conventions. So like I need that rush, you know what I mean? It's like a drug addiction. And, you know, I'm working with my kid and it's very hard for him to feel engaged because he's not excited about it, because I wasn't excited about it. Though, you know, most kids don't like school. And but what really upset me was when I was in school, I always used comics as an escape. Mm-hmm. Well, now these kids have access to comics in a lot of senses, and in the sense that you could read them digitally. It's never been easier to get comics, but to keep people engaged with the art form and to see it as a you know, real form of literature is a very uplifting thing. Oh, yeah. And you know, like I think that's, you know, that's a very good thing. And to be able to pass on the knowledge of that this is work, that this isn't just some like BS thing, is important, because most people don't take what we do very seriously. Like, you know, you're a comic book artist, so yeah, you know,
what do you really do though?
What do you really do? But you found a way to integrate that passion into an actual career that no one can deny or critique. You know, it's a very and you're teaching to a very difficult age level, you know. Mm-hmm. So you said you don't want to oversaturate. You mentioned that you do other projects. Can you tell me about those other projects and how you kind of work them into your pitching and, you know, how you move books?
Yeah, the Offspring is always my main focus.
Okay.
But you know, any artist will tell you that you can't just be honed in on that one thing.
Of course.
You're just going to get burned out. So what I try to do is a story arc of the Offspring, and then go do. I just put out a one-shot, a 24-page one-shot called Shady Lady that came out in January, and you can find it on Amazon. It's just Shady Lady Whalen, and it'll pop right up. But I try to find different ways to be able to go do different things. And Shady Lady is more of a noir thriller. There's no superheroes. There's no anything like that. It's kind of like, I don't know if you know or your audience would get this reference, but it's kind of like Frank Sinatra and Suddenly, the movie Suddenly.
I haven't seen Suddenly. I'm sorry. I don't want to pretend to know stuff when I don't.
No, I'm a big Frank Sinatra fan, big film noir fan, stuff like that. Black and white, darker themes, to where maybe it doesn't quite go so great. So that's kind of the theme of Shady Lady. So I tried to, and then I went back to Offspring to be able to finish up, or to continue a story arc and be able to finish that up. Book 11 that just came out today.
Oh, congratulations. You got a new comic out today.
Thank you very much, yeah.
How does that feel?
That feels really good to be able to have.
Especially in this situation. Yeah, good for you, brother. That's awesome.
Issue 11 is the first of a part 3, part 1 of 3 that is going to be coming out. Hopefully, part 2 will come out in the next month and a half, and then part 3 before the end of summer. And then I'll start a couple more one-shots that I have already ready to go. They're already written. They're already thumbed out. I just have to find the time to be able to, like I said, weave them into the fabric.
That's awesome, man. So how can I buy your books online? I mean, I'll give you time at the end to send people, but I'm just asking. Oh yeah, you had mentioned Amazon. I completely forgot. Sorry.
I have the trades on Lulu.com, and just search the name of the book, Offspring Whalen.
Right on.
I have the books on Comixology also.
That's awesome. So, how's digital distribution been for you? Like, are you able to sell a lot of books digitally?
Touch and go.
Touch and go
digitally, yeah. Touch and go.
So, but you do everything yourself, though, right?
Yes.
Any interest in looking into like Webtoon and stuff like that?
Yes, I have. Especially with all this weirdness, you would think you'd have that I would have more time, but sometimes time is taken.
You're telling me, brother. You're telling me. I never thought I'd be this busy. I thought I would be like, and that's another thing that's getting me is that when this all started, I told myself, all right, I'm going to get my kid through school. It's my job right now to help him out. And when I see how unstructured the school system is, it's really demotivating me. Like, they're trying to reach out, but the structure is just not there on those elective days. And so he's getting educated far less. And I don't know if I'm being too hard on myself, or if I'm, taking this maybe too seriously or not seriously enough. I really can't gauge it, because I know that I'm not as connected, because I'm trying to work. I'm trying to, like, this is an important time too, to get to know other creators and to, take this experience back with me to conventions. It's a very fine balancing act. And both my wife and I were dealing with it, because aside from that, I also have I'm freelance editing stuff, and I have to keep things moving forward with the book. And you're a father too. Is that true? Yeah. So yeah, how many kids?
2 kids, boy and girl.
Okay, right on. And how have you been managing everything with,
Good. We have my 13-year-old son and my 11-year-old daughter, almost to turn the next age. Their birthdays are coming up pretty quick here. So my 13-year-old son is a go-getter. So he's class president, honor roll, all that stuff. He's calling the teacher to get more work. So I'm very lucky in that regard.
Yeah.
My daughter, the same thing. She's a good student. She's more creative. Like my son is more left-brained. My daughter's more right-brained. So my daughter has that more creative side that I have. So we're learning instruments. We just bought some ukuleles a couple months ago before all this happened, and we were picking them up here and there. But now we're jamming out full songs and having a great time.
Well, it's interesting, because my wife has always been very strict about limiting their video game time.
Yeah.
And I was always kind of like against it, because before all this happened, he had all these activities that he was going to, and I'm like, you know what, let him play some freaking video games, let him chill out.
Yeah.
But now that he doesn't have any of these activities, there is no cutoff point for it. And so the only thing he can talk about, and the only thing he's really interested in, is Minecraft or Roblox. So we took away his iPad for a week, and now he's lost TV privileges as well. And I told him, if you're bored, you're bored, it's just going to be what it's going to be. But I think that he needs that, because that's what's going to get him to start finding interests in other things. Like, I don't think I would have ever found comics interesting again if I had only played video games and wasn't pulled away from it. And as much as I love video games, I really do, I'm a huge advocate for video games. I think there's a lot of, it can provide a huge sense of relief, and especially during times like this. So I hate taking it away from him, but I feel like it's also the perfect time to take it away from him, because this is when he can learn right now that I must better myself, that I'm not going to die of boredom. He's not going to have a choice, really. He's going to have to find something that he's interested in, and it's just a matter of staying consistent with it. And I totally get what you're going through, but yet your work ethic seems to have inspired your kids, where mine hasn't. Or maybe they're following my poor example that I'm setting for them by playing video games all day. I have no idea.
Well, obviously a lot of students that I have play video games, and they talk about Minecraft a lot. So I actually weaved it into a lesson to be able to talk about 3-dimensional forms, the difference between 2-dimensional flat shapes and 3-dimensional forms. And I use Minecraft as an example of how to draw and create objects using 3-dimensional forms. So maybe that could be a way to be able to get them into drawing a little bit more, and be able to kind of have that understanding of 2-dimensional shape to 3-dimensional form to object in the real world. So when I talk about 3-dimensional forms and I draw a cube with the kids, every single time, that's just like Minecraft. That's just like Minecraft. I go, yeah, just like Minecraft. You got it, man. Let's keep drawing. So it's a good way to be able to kind of weave in there.
So while they're drawing, you're drawing too.
Oh yeah.
When they have questions for you, they can come and ask you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that also takes patience, I'm sure, because you're probably working on your book. If you just finished the book, then that means you were working on it. And by the way, I'd like to buy this issue 11 that you have just finished. So consider me sold on it, because I not only want it as a memory, but as a way to be your first sale and congratulate you for finishing a comic book in this period. So far, all the creators I've talked to, not one of them has informed me that they finished anything except for Ted Sikora, who was our guest yesterday, but he doesn't count because it's Ted. but you're David, so it does count.
It's hard. It's hard to be able to find the time, especially like
it does. It is, and to Ted's credit too, it's like he works extremely hard, and he's also balancing all these different things.
Yeah.
But I dream of being finished with the issue of Eastern Shin that I'm working on right now. But it's just like I'm even happy that I'm finishing up a layout. That's the same rush of finishing up a book. Every page feels like an entire comic.
Oh, yeah. I was lucky enough yesterday. I'm pretty lucky with my wife and kids, where I sat down. I'm a pretty traditional. So I sat down and just started laying out. I have, let's see, 7 pages of the next issue already kind of penciled out to be able to. There we go. To be able to figure out.
Here, bring it a little closer to the camera so we can all see it.
Very loose.
Yeah. You're just thumbnailing shit. Yeah.
But,
so and so you handle all this, and then you handle all the I assume you print. How do you print your books?
I'm actually in between printers right now.
So am I actually.
Yeah, I wanted to. Sometimes I just get them from Amazon. Sometimes it's just easier just to order 10 books from Amazon and call it.
Yeah, right on. One of my other clients is doing that. Yeah.
So if I know somebody's gonna want 2 or 3 books and they want me to ship them to them, I'll just order them on Amazon, repackage them up, put my stamp on it, send it out.
Right on, man.
The easiest way to be able to do it, but still kind of
they do a pretty good job of printing them too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
are you happy with the print quality?
Yeah, I've got one right here. Actually, this is the trade.
Please show me.
The first trade of the Offspring. There we go. Find the camera. The first trade of the Offspring, and it's really nice.
Well, sign me up for that too. I'm gonna buy. I'll buy that. I assume you want me to buy it on Amazon.
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right, cool. So I'll buy that, and then how do I get your issue 11? Is that going to be on Amazon too?
On Amazon also. Actually, you can go to my website, correcthandedcomics.com, and it has links to everything.
Yeah, and you'll tell us that again right before we end the show, of course. But I just want to let you know I'm on board, man.
Thank you very much.
That's really cool. Yeah, it's a lot, and I say this all the time. It's one thing to say that you've got an idea. It's another thing to actually do it and to balance and make everything work in life and to have a concept and to share that idea. How does it feel?
It feels good, actually. I would say 10 years ago, I'm an old man. So 10 years ago, still an old man 10 years ago. But after getting my teaching degree and getting a job, I in my 20s kind of fumbled around and put some stuff out here and there, but nothing really was working as a graphic designer, so doing a lot of that stuff. But then when I really started to get a foothold into teaching, into what I wanted to teach, and was really getting confidence in that, I said it's time to start telling some stories.
Right on.
10 years ago, and I've had the Offspring since I was 18 years old. So I've had most of the stories since I was 18 years old, and most of the characters and their story arcs and their what motivates them as a character for a pretty long time. So then just sat down and just started drawing. And if I didn't like it, I'd tear it up and I'd draw it again. And didn't like it, I'd tear it up and draw it again. And sometimes it'd be bouncing a baby, which they're not babies anymore, but sometimes it'd be bouncing a baby on my knee while I was trying to draw it. So I just after getting my degree and becoming a teacher, it really started to motivate me to be able to do more with something that I knew I always wanted to do to begin with. So it was very much a motivator to be able to have that focus as a teacher and bring that focus into my comic book work also.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, I still feel this this energy coming from you, like about your passion with everything, and how it's just coming through, like in a very different way than say how I would be at how I would personally be at a convention. And that's something I've been kind of thinking a lot about lately, is because the one consistency I've noticed from every episode is that all of my guests I can relate to in some way. But sometimes I have guests, and I would say you were one of those guests, that I'm not sure how we relate. And now I see it. It's really cool. Like, your passion comes through so many different outlets, and you're able to disperse it so well. And I'm sure that's probably affected you very positively throughout this whole pandemic.
I think so. Yeah, one of the things that, and my wife gets not mad at me, but she laughs at me sometimes because it's never turned off. It's the brain never gets turned off. We'd be sitting and watching a show. We'd be sitting there. She's sitting there, almost falling asleep, and I'll get up real quick and I'll run over to my notebook and I'll start writing down. She's like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" I said, "I just had an idea. I got to write down the major plot points so I don't forget it." So the ideas never stop. If I lived to be 100, I probably wouldn't be able to get all of my ideas out into the page, onto a comic book. But trying to find the ones that I think will connect the most to the reader has probably been the thing that keeps me moving forward even more. To be able to say, I think people are going to like this. And then I'll have something where I think I've got it completely fleshed out and go, I don't know if that's going to work as well. And so I'll put that to the side and see if I can kind of figure out what's going on with it a little bit later. But yeah, your brain never shuts off. It's never rest time. You wake up in the middle of the night. That's a great idea. Let me write that down. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it's funny too, because we construct our own deadlines, and so what if something doesn't get done? You can always put it off. What keeps you focused? What keeps you honed in on what you need to do?
It's really knowing that my family is behind me doing it has really been a big motivator for me to know that if I say, "Hey guys, can I have an hour to go into the den and draw?" And they'll go, "Yeah, go for it." And then they know that when I'm coming out, then I'm ready to be dad 100%. I might have other things in my brain. I might have to stop for a second, in the middle of playing Monopoly or tossing the football or playing ukulele or whatever it is. But if I say, "Can I have an hour to go play?" or to go draw, yeah, no problem. And when I come out,
it really is play, though. Stanley himself said it. Work is play when you're doing this stuff. Yeah, I find it very hard to do that because between my wife and I, we're both we both get stretched pretty thin sometimes, and both of our kids are still so young. We have a 7-year-old and a 2.5-year-old.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah. And our 2.5-year-old, he likes to call the shots. So it's very hard to get him to see our point of view on things. So yeah, we're dealing with a lot. But it's like they're still so young and impressionable that you wanna instill good qualities in them. And I think the best way to do it is by setting a good example for them and keeping yourself occupied and positive and finding some way to resume your normal routine activities even as this is going on, because if you don't do that, then there's no sense of normalcy. And this is what makes this situation worse, because one thing I think is certain is that once the economy reopens, it's not closing up again, and it will be opening up within a month. I think by the end of May, we are opening our doors whether we're ready or not. And when that happens, we're going to see spikes. We're already seeing it happen. Yep. And that's a natural thing that happens in this situation. And I don't think that this is going anywhere. I don't think that there's a vaccine that's ever going to prevent people from getting it. But I also think that we'll manage to survive in an environment where it exists because we're adaptable and we've adapted to many things. Right. And as long as we keep ourselves healthy and are mindful of what's going on and do our best to be responsible, eventually all you can do is depend on yourself to stay healthy, because you can't rely on the entire world to stay locked down. And that's a really hard reality to accept for a lot of people. So I think I understand where a lot of people are coming from, but at the same time, I also understand people's desire to want to get back to their routines, because I feel like as a father, my child has much less structure than what he did before. And I've always felt like I've been an involved father, regarding, my son's development. I mean, I know what activities he's in, but I'm also busy. I was traveling to all these different conventions and working. So, I mean, maybe I've come to realize that I'm not as hands-on with them as I thought I was, and maybe I need to face that fact,
Yeah. I feel that way sometimes, where you're like, am I doing enough am I doing enough? And you step back and you, I found that I can't think that way. I find that if I question whether I'm doing enough, then I'll overdo it, and I'll just start pushing myself, and not being able to take the time to be able to do the things that I need to do also. So it's again that walking that tightrope, find that very fine line of, okay, now Dad needs a half hour to be able to go decompress or draw or whatever. Okay, Mom looks like she's about to burst, so Mom, why don't you go, do whatever you got to do, take a nap, whatever you got to do, kind of thing. So it's, keeping them happy and healthy can be hard if you're not happy and healthy. And that's one thing I think my wife and I do really well is giving each other breaks.
That is so important. I give my wife breaks and she finds more work for herself and for me to do. And I'm like, I don't want to do that right now.
Yeah. Break is to make a honey-do list for you, is that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But I enjoy a lot of the more remedial things in the house. Like I enjoy cooking very much, and I only eat once a day. And because I found that I like to eat really big portions. And I've lost a lot of weight recently.
Nice. And
in order to maintain it, I've decided that it just works for my body. My body responds well to it. I eat once a day, but I eat, not whatever I want, but all the healthiest thing I can possibly prepare myself for myself. Yeah. So I take a lot of time to think about it. Lately, I've been not as creative. I've been just kind of doing the same thing over and over again until I get bored of it. But it's kind of the adventure and it gets different parts of my brain working, whereas when I prepare for my family, I don't have to, I feel like those skills transfer over and I can prepare better meals for my family. And I like cooking for my wife and for my kids very much. And my kid never appreciates it. He's like, Dad, I don't like this bread. It's too hard. I'm like, shut up and eat it. You don't know what's good for you. Damn it.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, I think my go-to is French toast. So you're already beating me.
And there's nothing wrong with that either. I think everybody provides something different. You have a level of patience that cannot be disputed compared to me. And that's something I constantly have to work on. I mean, Stan Lee was himself known to be a very impatient man. He did not like having stuff on his desk, and when he wrote the foreword to Eastern Shin, he basically, I was in his office with him for 15 minutes and I gave him, I asked him, Stan, would you write the foreword to my book? And he was like, where is this going to be published? And I said, oh, just in my graphic novel. And he was like, okay, you're going to email me all the details and then I'm going to respond to you. And that's not a good Stan impression. No, Ted tried to do it yesterday, but he didn't pull it off either, but I'll stop myself. And anyway, yeah, like I go back and I'm like, he's never going to respond to me. It's just like he gave me this email and I had to write it down. I didn't even have his business card. I'm like, he's not getting back to me. I know for a fact, like he's going to tell me to piss off. And that email is a total fake. I sent them, and the email looked hoaxy too. It was combkman@aol.com. I mean, it's like the most like, all right, well, yeah. Yeah, it sounds made up. It is not made up. That was his real email.
Awesome.
He responded to me, and it was amazing. And then he sent me 2 copies of the foreword written up. One was signed Stan Lee, his whole name, and then the other one was Stan. And I gave that to my co-writer because in a lot of ways he helped make that happen. And the whole thing about having that experience really motivated me to want to keep doing what I was doing. And the one thing I always look at because I admired Stan tremendously. I still do. I think what he did is amazing. I'm sure you feel the same way to some degree, maybe. Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah. I know there's like that Stan versus Jack camp, and I never like to assume because now you talk to people, and there are people who had bad experiences with Stan too. Those are their experiences. You can't ever say like, oh well, you don't know what you're talking about. Stan's the greatest guy in the world. Well, maybe he is to the majority of people, but sometimes we come off the wrong way, and it's not intentional, but yeah. So, what creators inspired you?
I was a big Dan Jurgens fan growing up. I was in my teens. I really liked. I grew up reading a lot of the old Archie.
Right on, man.
Mouse, stuff like that. the old Hanna-Barbera stuff.
Right on, man.
As a young kid.
Yeah.
Even to the point where we would go to, I grew up in central Ohio, so we would go to Kings Island, and they would have the Hanna-Barbera creatures around, and I would have to get my picture with every single one of them. My parents were like, enough with the pictures, but I would go every single Hanna-Barbera. So growing up with those kind of more cartoony comic books was fun, and then when I got into superhero stuff, it was shooting for the stars after that. So when I really got into it, like a lot of people my age, I would say, the Dan Jurgens run on Superman was really good. I think
I know, didn't he write multiple runs on Superman?
He did. So I guess so.
And I have to be honest. I mean, I've read plenty of Superman. Well, it's plenty Superman. I've read Birthright. I really liked Birthright. I really liked Brian Azzarello's run on Superman. I read the Alan Moore thing, but I've never been like and the Death of Superman. Yeah. But I can't say like I'm an intimately Superman following guy. So what was it about? Tell us about this arc. What spoke to you about?
Yeah, it was the Death of Superman.
Okay, right on.
Early 90s.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So
I love Death of Superman.
It wasn't even so much about the storyline, which I did really enjoy. I mean, obviously, it was a way to be able to continue the story because it didn't have, if you ever read anything about the back, the idea of the story was because let's just kill him. We don't have anything else to do. Let's just kill him off. And let's see what happens.
It is a very dramatic death, though. That death was pretty goddamn epic. All those issues that it came across, like a lot of people discredit and say, "Oh, this is just one of those '90s things." No, they took like 24 issues to kill him off, and it was like this massive battle, and like he died so heroically. It was great, and it was so tragic.
Justice League, in Justice League of America, they had him Justice League fighting Doomsday before, so they had a lot. There was a lot going on. There's a lot going on.
And honestly, it kind of, in many ways, follow. It's like that's the same kind of storyline they have for Tony Stark in the MCU movies in a lot of ways. Yeah, it's incredibly like epic. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, so, now I know Dan Jurgens. I mean, I've always seen his name, but I never paid attention. And you can't follow every creator, so I feel bad because I know Dan Jurgens' face. I've seen him. I haven't like talked to him or anything. I'm not like buddies with him, but I know who he is. Like I see his face everywhere at conventions, but I don't actually sometimes remember what, he actually worked on. And it's.
What I really liked about him also was writer and artist.
Oh, right on. Yeah. And that speaks to you too. Yeah, right on, man.
Really did. I can remember saying, wow, he did double duty here. He wrote it and then he drew it, and it's worked. It came out. And
right on.
He had obviously editors and people, helping him along the way. But it was that idea that he, from start to finish, he was the guy. He was the guy, and I really appreciated that, especially also early Frank Miller stuff.
Oh hell yeah, man! Dude, his stuff on Daredevil is tight. I love Miller's stuff on Daredevil, but my favorite arc is Batman Year One, when him and Musichelli. And Musichelli, he did right before COVID-19 hit. Oh no, it's Musichelli. Sorry, I fucked up his name. He has a video. It's online for free. He spoke at like some art academy in New York. And it's a fascinating video. He just like talks about his technique and everything, and he talks about like sequential storytelling and how to break it up and everything. And it's really tight. Yeah, if you can find it. But yeah, for sure. It's a really good lesson in making comics. But Frank Miller stuff. I mean, tackling both those roles is incredible. And I will tell you right now, Frank Miller. He absolutely had an influence over my work. 300. I mean, come on. If you look at the way I present Eastern Shin, I ain't going to deny the fact that Frank Miller didn't inspire me. Yeah. In many ways he did. In fact, like that's one of the things I want to recreate. Why I have so much belief in it is because I remember seeing 300 in the movie theater, and the theater was packed. And this was a movie that was based on a real, like, true story and stuff. And it was awesome. And it was historical, but it wasn't like bogged down by history. It was like free flowing. It felt like a comic book. And I was like, I want to do that same kind of thing. Not exactly the same way, but so taking that, how do you see your stuff? Like, do you ever want to see your stuff get adapted?
Oh yeah, definitely. Whether it happens or not, it's a 1 in a million shot. But there's that always one chance. There's always that one shot that you get to be able to do it. I think that it's funny. I'm sure every creator that's ever created anything sees it in another medium. So I would see the Offspring as a live action TV show, and I'm not embarrassed to say that I've already
Hell no, dude.
in my brain. Yeah.
Absolutely. And here's another thing too. If it can happen for American Splendor, it can happen for anybody.
Yeah.
And it does. Like I have seen it, and I'm like flabbergasted when it happens, because the majority of writers out there have to work extremely hard, taking on even artists. One of my friends in the industry, I was talking to her on Monday, and I came to her for advice. And as we were talking, she told me that, like, when she first started, that you have to take on these jobs and kind of put a lower price tag on yourself in order to make your way into the field. So you're making very little money. You're basically barely making ends meet, but you're building those necessary networks to show people that, like, hey, I'm dependable. If you hire me, I will get the job done for you. Yeah. And I think that's a very important thing. And I honestly, as a freelance editor, that's the phase I'm at right now, because I've been so honed in on Yisun Shin for the last 10 years, and now I have not that I've had to take a step back, but because I don't have conventions, I have to find a different source of income. And it's just replacing what I'm doing or adding on to what I'm doing at conventions, because I love working for other creators. I love helping them, bring their visions to life, just as I'm sure you do. Giving students an idea of what making comics is like. It's a really amazing. It's a way of giving back.
Oh yeah. One of the best parts for me is when I meet another writer, another artist, and they say, let's do something. And I say, okay, great, let's do something. And example is, one of the other books I have out is a 100-page graphic novel called The Loved Ones. And it's a story of the children of classic movie monsters who are abandoned by their movie monster parents. So the children go hunting them.
That's awesome.
And it's a story that kind of came up out of nowhere, and the writer of it was Brian Menard from Dojo Kun Comics. You can find him on Facebook. He's a good, solid writer, had some great ideas on it, and really took the visuals that I had in my brain and put them in the script so I could get them out onto the page. So it was a really good experience, and I'm looking to have more experiences like that with other writers and artists, to be able to say, hey, let's do something. Let's get something together. Let's make something really different.
Said about that, like, I know a lot of creators who are trying to, like, make their way and get their stuff known out there. They put together these collaborations, which obviously they don't make any money on because they can't. But they'll say, I always wanted to tell a Spider-Man story, so I'm going to tell a Spider-Man story. I'm just not going to take any money for it. Yeah. Marvel can buy it from me, but I'm not going to take any money for it. And when you can have that relationship with an artist, and it's something where you can do that kind of fan thing, you do it for the experience, for the reader, and in a lot of ways you want to be seen that you can write Spider-Man or Batman even if you're not getting paid for it. Which
eventually I think get paid for it. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Why not? It's a great promotional tool to get yourself seen and recognized by, people in general. I mean, and get people accustomed to your work. I think that's what works for a lot of artists, is the fact that, when they come to shows, they got superheroes all over their walls that instantly attracts people, especially if they're related to your art style. So when you're set up at conventions, are you focused more on selling books, or are you focused more on doing sketches?
I don't sketch much, actually, at conventions. I'm really trying to make connections with the people that come up to the booth. So even walking around to be able to see the other creators. So I'll sell books. Awesome, no problem. In fact, that's what I'm there for. But really, it's about the connections that I make afterwards. There's been times where I've met 3 or 4 people at the conventions, and we'll hook up on Facebook, and we'll continue to have a relationship afterwards. And we'll plug each other's books, and we'll like each other's and share each other's stuff. Really, for me, the conventions, that's that's what it's about making those connections with other creators. Selling the books, I do sell more books through Amazon or Lulu or Comixology or whatever platform it is. But the connections that I make with other people who like comic books really is the reason I go. Selling books is great, don't get me wrong, but those connections are really what I'm there for, and what I love going and talking to people about.
I'm making a mental note of this, that this is absolutely something that I will apply when I return to the convention front lines, because I never think about it like that. I always go to cons and I'm thinking about selling as many books as I can. And by the time the day is over, I'm exhausted, and it's hard to kind of like keep that I need to network thing going too, and the thing is I never want to be, especially after all day of selling, the last thing I want to do is really talk about myself anymore, let less alone talk at all. I just kind of want to take it easy. But I think that there's something to be said about, getting to know people in the industry. And I'm very glad I had a chance to talk to you today, David. And I can tell you this, if I'm ever at the same convention where you're at, you can count on me to hang out with you afterwards, whether you like it or not.
I will like it. I will like it a lot.
That's awesome, man.
I've been trying to get some of the conventions in Ohio and into Chicago Con. I've been to Chicago Con, but it's been a while again. So kind of.
Well, you mentioned before you jumped on the show that you've come to Chicago before. The next time you're in town, please let me know. And I'd love to get together with you for a drink or something.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, and I wish you nothing but the very best of luck and success with everything that you're doing. I can absolutely feel your passion and sincerity for bringing comics out there. There's something I've been thinking about the other day too, that, there's no such thing as the most passionate man in comics. Lots of people can be passionate about comics, and lots of people can have, but everybody's got their own approach. Mm-hmm. Everybody's got their own way of showing that, like, I can contribute something. Yeah. And I think what you're contributing is so important. It's more important than any Marvel or DC title, because what you're doing is you are a figure for people who need it, and especially at this time. So I wish you the best of luck as the school year comes to a close, and keep creating and, keep inspiring your students.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're talking about earlier about rejection. That's one of the things also, that not everybody's going to like it. So you take that criticism, you absorb it, you take what you can from it, and then you just let it go.
Absolutely. Yeah. There are plenty of bad reviews of my book out there, but actually I wouldn't say plenty, but that's not a really good way to promote my book. There are no bad reviews of shit out there. Forget I said anything. Edit that out.
Yeah. I try to remember not one of my favorite shows of all time is Firefly, but not everybody likes Firefly.
Well, I often bring up this one bad review I got because I liken it to people's expectations. And, this guy who I sold at a convention, he was expecting a historical biopic of Ascension, and he got the very opposite of that. He got a book with action and drama and, fully thought out battle sequences and things like that. But he was focused more on the fact that I didn't focus on the politics enough and have pages and pages of, people talking to each other, which would not engage the mass media, in my opinion. And he could prove me wrong, and then I could, he could do all the work I've done, and then, he can prove me wrong. And I welcome him to do it. That would be a huge, that would give me something to strive for too. But, are his opinions accepted? Sure. I mean, like, he was expecting a different experience. And, I have to say, not every style appeals to me. Like the Hanna-Barbera stuff, I never went near that stuff. Like that to me felt too, and please don't take any offense to it, like juvenile, but it's not juvenile because it's lighthearted, and a lot of it is subjected from reality, like The Simpsons, which I'm a huge fan of, seasons 2 through 8. And, all the stuff that all the ways they play on reality. And Garfield, my son loves Garfield. And, Garfield is a total spoof of reality and everything. So what better way to relate to kids than that, in a way that they can, they can find some escapism,
Calvin and Hobbes is great.
Yeah, Calvin and Hobbes, I like that too, And I don't know. I guess what I like about Calvin and Hobbes is the concept really spoke to me, but some of and I'm sure all the cartoon stuff can speak to me in some way too, if I'm willing to listen. But I've always been kind of hard-edged and focused on, my rated R personality. So
my wife would say that juvenile is probably one of the best words to describe me. So that's a compliment.
Well, no, that's outside of it too. My wife also tells me I'm immature, but I'm not listening most of the time. But my friend, before we go, can you please tell us where we can find you one last time? And say your final piece. You got the show floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, I've got correcthandedcomics.com is where you can find links to all my books. I have multiple different books with multiple different genres. We have our ongoing series, The Offspring, which issue 11 came out today. You can find links to that on correcthandedcomics.com. I also have a 100-plus page graphic novel called The Loved Ones, about the children of classic movie monsters who go on the hunt for their parents. I have a 4-issue miniseries called Evolution UTERO that is probably the most traditional superhero book that I've put out, where it is the worst woman in the world, teenager, 20-something, who finds herself impregnated with a superpowered fetus, and how that pregnancy and how that experience changes her, hopefully for the positive. And I also have, like I said, our one-shot 24-page thriller noir, Shady Lady, which no superpowers, it's just a dark thriller that it came out in January, and you can find that links to that all those books on correcthandedcomics.com. You can find me on Facebook at correcthandedcomics. You can find me on Twitter at handedcorrect or at the Offspring 00. And I have one more thing that I have to
take your time. Take your time, please.
A Western novel that I wrote called The Last Ride to Tyburn. You can find that on Amazon also, and it's a traditional spaghetti Western with guns and romance and comedy and ridiculousness and bad guys and good guys and shoot 'em ups. And you can find that on Amazon.com, and links to that on my correcthandedcomics.com webpage also. So lots going on. And I'm very excited to be able to come on the show and be able to promote and talk to you, Onrie. This has been awesome. Thank you very much.
Dude, you're awesome. Thank you so much, man. I'm glad we're buds now. So thank you so much. All right. I'm going to say goodbye to you. Thank you again. Thank you for joining us, and I'll see you in the future, my friend. Thank you again. Yes. What a great episode. I love hearing stories about what everybody is doing right now in our field, and how we're keeping ourselves motivated and inspired. And I hope in many ways that it is helping you too. I see Megan Colleen has been watching our show, and I appreciate that so much. Your feedback means the world to me. And I apologize if I'm not responding to you during the show. It's because I really want to give the creator a chance to, all of our special guests, a chance to say what they want to say without being interrupted. And this is more of like an experience for them to kind of really allow themselves to go on unhinged, because typically what I find is when we're in panels, we're often wanting to say so much more than we can say, because we have to share the floor with so many other creators. So I really want to give Onward with Onrie is an experience for me to really give people a chance to say what they feel, and our creators in particular, because I think everybody has a very positive mindset about how to get through this. Everybody's adapting in their own very special way. And that's what I'm taking from the most, is the fact that we're all trying to survive this. And I have a feeling that because we're trying so hard and because we're persistent and not giving up, eventually we will succeed. So I have great faith in that, and I hope it keeps everybody else who's in comics and out of comics inspired, and that they know that if you apply yourself, and if you find a way to adapt to a situation, the results tend to be there. And that's not always easy to do or even possible. And if it's not, you shouldn't feel bad that you can't do that, because I know a lot of people who are in positions right now where they can't really, there's not much they can do. They're trapped at home. They're worried about loved ones who are, who could easily get sick. and they just don't feel comfortable. They don't want to put themselves out there and get other people sick. So I completely empathize with that and believe that this is not something that should go ignored. And I also think at the same time that people who are healthy and are responsible should be allowed to go to do the things that they need to do in life, because we need to work. And I don't know if that means that we'll see conventions anytime soon. I've prepared myself mentally for the fact that we probably won't have conventions for the rest of the year, and that's okay. I've found ways to adapt already, and so have all my contemporaries. And just wait, you'll see more guests coming on the show. I'm lining up people left and right. And it's so much fun talking to all of you, and you are helping me so much throughout all of this. So thank you, and please subscribe. Please join us on every episode. I try and have it Tuesdays through Thursdays at 3:00 Central. But sometimes if I have a guest who I feel is really up there and really can boost our views, I'm going to try and get them in sooner, because they're so busy that it's kind of hard to work around their schedules. So this weekend we got Jen King from Space Cadet Collections. It's a retailer in Texas. And just yesterday, she has been brought on as a director for the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund, which is an organization that helps comic book creators who don't have health insurance. So if you are an established comic book freelancer, you never really got health care. And as you get older, you start to have conditions which add up in bills. And so the Comic Book Legal Defense Club gathers donations from other creators, and they auction them off. And the money that they collect is used to basically provide insurance for freelance creators who don't have the means to get to them. So just that alone tells you that this is not a person who does not have a fascinating story and an awfully big heart. And as a matter of fact, she's helped me sell over 50 copies of my book during this quarantine, which has been really hard for me, and she keeps telling me that I see consistent orders coming in. So this is all very important to me. And, I look forward to bringing her on. And, David was a fantastic guest, and we're going to have a whole ton more. So stay tuned. All right, folks, I'll be back tomorrow. We got Kara Nicole coming in. She's going to kick my ass for messing that up. I'm so excited to talk to her. Tune in. I'll see you then. Onward to victory.